Hello Dojo Nation. Today we did a live Q&A on Facebook. It was a huge success. We talked about chronically flat Fs. We talked about sweet spot on the Chanter read. We talked about double toning bass drones and a whole lot more. So get ready here for today's episode of Piper's Dojo TV. James Lindgren's here from London. That is awesome. Great to see you. Jimmy joined. He also asked a good question that we're going to get to later in the show. Alistair, how you doing? Good to see you. Let's get started with the first question here today. So the first question was from Ashby, who's one of our big fans here. He is asking, over the last 3 months, I have been having bass drone double toning problems. Okay. His pipe band leadership has checked his pipes, just as he has a bunch of times. Everyone says they are set up well. However, 10% of his strike-ins at rehearsals are resulting in double toning bass drone. Okay, I assume the problem is me, something that you're doing wrong. When practicing the strike-ins, what do we do? He plays Atherton pipes with Lee and Son bag. Okay, good. So here's my answer to that question. First of all, don't worry too much about the make of the bagpipes, the drones, the bag, even the technique. We'll talk about that a little bit in a second. But basically, double toning bass drones is a very serious problem. It's sort of a catastrophic thing that can happen during an attack. That's really, really bad. So the first thing that you need to do, which I'm sure you've already done, which is to prepare yourself just in case a double tone happens. You need to make sure you know what to do, which in the case of a double toning bass drone is very simple. You just want to stop your pipes completely and start them up again, right? That's it's very important to do that. Don't use any sudden moves. Should your bass drone double tone during a performance, the sudden moves thing is if you do it right, okay, and the judge doesn't notice anything radical, it might be it's entirely possible to get away with that, and we've seen that many times, even in the very, very top bands in the world. Even when they've won the Worlds, we've seen double toning bass drones, and we've seen that actually result not negatively as long as you know what to do. Now, with the 10% double toning problem, and I know, Ashby, we've talked about this a little bit in the past. One of the big things, and I don't have my bagpipes here in the office with me today, they're at home, but one of the big things is the very first joint on the bass drone, okay? Absolutely minimizing the height of the tuning pin on the first joint of the bass is one of the number one tricks for eliminating the double toning bass. So, this is something that I got originally from Jack Lee and is indisputably true, which is the lower that the bass drone tunes on the pin, the less likely you are to have a double tone. Now, your job as a player in the band, and you can use that trick, and you might need to adjust the reed. Okay, you might want to adjust the second joint on top to be as high as possible on the tuning pin to help minimize this first tuning pin on the bass. But then your job as a piper is to make it so that there's a 0% chance of double tone. And with appropriate setup, you can do that. So that's about as far into that as I'm able to go without being able to get my hands on your instrument, Ashby. And of course, how to reach me because you often sign in at Dojo U, so we can talk about it a little bit more. Let me know if folks are, let me know everything's coming through clearly here. That was my first question for Ashby. Let's scroll up here. Actually, while we're here, Teddy asks, could you cover what instrument is best to get for an adult beginner piper? I could offer you my opinion on this, okay? The answer is, here at the dojo, we definitely are big fans of, anything by McCallum or Nail. Those are the two big manufacturers of bagpipes. It all depends on, for me, it all depends on exactly what sort of level of commitment that you have to, really, really working hard on your piping. If you're absolutely committed to working really hard on it and you're super passionate about it, right? You want to go with a McCallum or a Nail, on the closer to the higher end of the aesthetics scale. So if you go to pipersdojo.com, you can surf the bagpipe selection, and you'll be able to see that aesthetically there's a bunch of different options. When it comes to how the bagpipe looks. Just keep in mind that generally speaking, a McCallum or a Nell bagpipe, it's going to have this, generally speaking, the same quality of sound regardless of what aesthetic setup you go with the pipes. So I would recommend weighing exactly how serious the adult beginning piper is. And then basically it's just a matter of adjusting the price point there, going with a well-established brand of bagpipes. And there are other really awesome sets that are great. McCallum and Nell just happens to be what we're most familiar working with at the Piper's Dojo. Yeah, Eric is pointing out Wallace bagpipes, also excellent. I love the Henderson product. I love the Gibson product. I would go with well-established brands. And before you purchase anything, if you're going to purchase something outside of that wheelhouse, you just really want to check with field experts in the field, whether it be us here or somebody else, like true experts that have really been around the block to say, well, this instrument is good for a beginner. Here's one thing to consider. I don't recommend legacy instruments, otherwise known as instruments that are from the older generations. I don't recommend those to beginners generally because a lot of the modern reeds are going to function not necessarily as designed, right? So modern reeds are designed for modern pipes and vice versa. And so when we get into vintage sets, it can be really tricky unless you're already a bagpipe expert in order to get things set up and humming really the way that you want to. So, yep, of course, Shepherd, right? Shepherd is another really well-established brand that is definitely recommendable. So I think I would go there with that question. As far as the rest of the setup of the instrument, keep it as simple as possible. I love that, by default, McCallum and Nell both are setting up the default instrument with synthetic bag and, well-established, simple synthetic drone reeds. I think that's the right way to go. You don't really want or need a sheepskin bag for a beginner. You definitely do not want or need like an extensive Ross canister system or any other of the complicated moisture control systems. You don't need or want any of that as a beginner. That's just my own professional opinion there. You're going to hear opinions all over the place, but that is my answer to that question. So Teddy, thank you very much for typing that in there. Let's scroll up a couple more people who commented directly on my wall. Let's see. Next question is from John, who asks a kind of interesting question here. It goes like this. My question has to do with the Chanter reed's sweet spot. That is the pressure required to produce the best tone, yet is determined by the pressure that produces unwanted sounds when a high G grace. Okay, that's getting kind of technical. I'll go into that in just a second. And then his question is, don't you want to blow at a pressure slightly below that pressure and not exactly at the pressure? So let me explain that question. So John is really active in our Dojo University online classes that we hold on a regular basis. He's a member. And one of the things that we talk about is how to achieve the best possible tonal quality out of the instrument. And one of the things, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is if you blow at the absolute bottom end of your reed when you're playing, the sound quality is not very good. And what I mean by the bottom end is the minimum pressure, right? The lower that pressure gets on the instrument, it sounds less and less good the lower that you go. And of course, as you know, if we go too low, what happens? The chanter cuts out and we get what's called a choke. So, the opposite is also true. The more air pressure we can put through the reed, generally speaking, the better the tonal quality will become. Okay, so we want to keep putting more and more and more and more pressure through that reed. Okay, that's our goal. However, just like at the bottom end, you're at risk of choking. At the high end, we're going to be at risk of squeaking. All right, so the way that we define the best possible pressure to play your pipes is the maximum possible pressure without risking squeaks. And that is that's a delicate thing, and it's something that we have to learn and develop to get a feel for. And so John's question is, my golden rule is you want to find that exact line where your chanter crosses over from being reliable to potentially squeaking, and you want to ride that line exactly. And his question is, don't you want to just be a little bit below that line? And the answer for me is no. I want to be right on the line because I'm not worried too much about accidentally being a little bit over. The worst case scenario when you're a little bit over that line is some very peripheral, trivial, unwanted sounds. Okay? What happens if we habitually blow below the line is that before long, right, it sort of snowballs, and before long we're down in the doldrums again in the low pressure. Okay, so that is, that's my personal philosophy. I'm always shooting for the line. And, squeaks are going to happen at first as we practice that general idea. Squeaks are going to happen. But if you can prepare in enough advance of any important performances, teaching yourself that skill is absolutely essential. And that's how we get great tonal quality. And as a side benefit, it's also how we develop better steadiness, because we now have an exact target that we shoot for, pressure-wise, when it comes to blowing steadily. John, I see your comment there. I'm going to like it. Press the button. And there we go. So John, thank you. That was an awesome question. Let's keep going to the next one. By the way, in the chat, in the comments, if you'd like to add a question, you absolutely can. Although you might want to wait until I get through some of these ones that I have here, just in case I miss it, and then we can call for some questions after that. Next on my wall, using the hashtag Piper's Dojo TV, by the way. Anything with that hashtag will eventually be seen, and we can use it for answering questions. Yes, James, if there's time, I will answer that question. I see it there. Teddy, all right, you tuned in. Thank you for tuning in. That's really cool. All right, so Jimmy says, so I was watching the pre-test. I did a little broadcast test here. Anyway, here's his question. This is a little bit pertaining to our business here at the Piper's Dojo and at Dojo University. If you were to sign up for the Piper's Dojo and take lessons, do the chanter sounds come through distorted on our live software? Are we going to be able to hear the fine crossing sounds or missed grips? Well, I will let some of our members comment in here, because I don't want you to feel like I'm just tooting my own horn here. So if you guys can comment in on the Facebook to give my answer some validity here, that would be great. But we actually can hear very, very well using the practice chanter on Dojo University. We can hear really, really well, and we do a lot of troubleshooting now of folks playing. Yeah, Jennifer says Andrew hears everything. And yeah, so things are very, very clear with the practice chanter. Now, with the bagpipes, and this is something we've been talking about a lot lately, with the bagpipes, were we to blast bagpipes through our computer into a Dojo U classroom, it's not going to sound very good because it'll be distorted, and normal microphones will distort that. John McCain says, you think maybe Andrew has heard a crossing noise or two from you? Maybe. That's what John McCain says. So, yeah, you might be right. I might have heard one or two. But where I was going with that response was bagpipes themselves don't sound great. Here's how we work around that, which is we have a system for submitting MP3 recordings, where you can actually take the time to make a good recording of yourself playing the pipes, and then you can upload that into our onto our server, and we can use that for critique. So we load the actual recording, and then when we press play, everybody's hearing the recording perfectly clear. So that's just a little bit of logistics. People ask me that all the time when it comes to Dojo U learning, and while we have people here signed in that are members, I can let them comment in and let you know how they enjoy it. Is it exactly the same as face-to-face? No, definitely not, but it's an excellent system for getting regular instruction all week long. So we do our 7:30 a.m. class every single weekday, and we're always just chipping away working on bagpiping just a little bit every day. So that is, a great question, and hopefully that was a good answer. So Jimmy, thank you very much for commenting on the wall. Let's see. I'm just scrolling up here. Hashtag Piper's Dojo TV from John McCain. What are the best ways to deal with a flat F on an otherwise nice chanter read or combo? Okay, this is kind of I think this is a little bit of a question that requires a lot of depth. So basically, pretending this is a bagpipe chanter, all of the notes on the chanter here sound okay, except for when we get to the F sounds very flat to the drones. Jimmy says, see you in the dojo after the season. That's kind of weird. I just got some sort of notification there. I don't know if, let me know if I'm still coming through clearly. That would be nice. I'm not that confident on Facebook Live yet, so let me know if anything's going awry there, but hopefully things are good. So the flat F problem. Now, there's a lot of different things to consider here. So first of all, obviously, make sure that all of the tape, the whole tape configuration needs to be, minimal. There needs to be very minimal tape on the chanter. Certainly beware of any tape on like low A or anything that might... Guys, thank you very much for commenting in. That's really good. You're clear on the iPhone. So make sure the tape configuration is basic. Make sure the reed is seated snugly in the reed seat and that it's not too dry and that's not too wet. It says 4 minutes until end of live video. That doesn't make sense. Maybe it thought I was inactive or something. We might have to go, maybe it only allows me to do half an hour. We might have to stop and then go live again. So make sure everything's clear. And then the other thing is, John, I wonder is the reed old and is it collapsing on F, meaning the reed has lost stability and that F just sort of sinks and the reed's not good, right? That's one of the questions. And then the other question is the F just plain flat? So there's a couple things we can do if it's just plain flat. Option number one is to tape all of the other notes on the chanter a little bit. Okay, definitely an option, and it's definitely something that happens occasionally in order to get everything set. Like, there's always going to be that one note on the chanter that has the least tape, which means that relative to all the other notes, it's going to be a little bit on the flat side, and that's just the way that it is. The other option, which is a little bit more rogue, but you'll see it done occasionally, especially if it's a regularly occurring problem. Okay, so if it's a regularly occurring problem where every reed you put in there is a little bit flat on F, that's where some pipers who are bold would actually carve out that note a little bit. So you'd actually carve some of the material out of the F on the top side of the F in order to move the F closer to the reed, making that note just a little bit sharper. And that's a great way to adjust it. For example, the nail chanter that I currently play, for whatever reason, it was always very, very flat on B, and all the other notes were very good. So I took a drill to that note, and that is sort of how that went. So that is an excellent question.